Hi, it's Zoe. Have you ever had the experience when all your good intentions go to hell and you have a massive blowout? You know, self-sabotage? Well, that's what we're talking about today and how to get back on track.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
Hey, welcome back. Last week was pretty massive. I spoke at the Institute of Management and Leaders, which was a really fun group here in Canberra, about the 9 critical steps to avoid becoming disposable and how to future-proof your position. And I'm talking about that same topic again coming up in Brisbane over breakfast on July 18th. So if you're interested in joining me for breakfast, I'd love to see you if you're in Vegas. So just email me, zoe@innercompass.com.au. I'll send you all the details and I'll see you there. Next, after that, I went straight to the CEO sleep out, and it was a pretty intense experience. Not for the sleeping out point. As you know, I'm a huge outdoorsy chick, and sleeping on the ground outside is no big deal. It is a big deal, though, if you have no job and you have no place to call home and you have no money to buy food. That is the plight of many homeless people. And so the CEO Sleep Out was about raising money to help St. Vincent de Paul's run services to help give people a hand up, get them out of the chronic situation that they're in so that they can get a toehold on getting back on track, either getting a job or at least getting cleaned up so they can have go for an interview, getting some skills so they can do job interviews and be job ready, or even just getting a shelter so they can get off the streets. Pretty amazing experience in terms of learning what St. Vincent de Paul's and other people do to help support and end this crisis situation. Huge experience. I write a little bit about it in this week's blog, so you can head over to zoerouth.com, hit blog, and you can see my article there. So other interesting thing was the trolls. I had a really interesting experience where I posted about it on LinkedIn, and a couple of people got really irate. Who knew? Who knew that helping the homeless was a cause for such fury? And the arguments were, if you're going to do charitable work, why do you have to brag about it on social media? Which I kind of get. You know, there's lots of people who do posturing about their good works, and what they're doing is more about their image than it is about the contribution. So that was one concern. And though my response to that is, well, charities exist in a business world, and they're competing for share of wallet as well as share of attention. And the more social media exposure they get, the better it is for their cause. So it's kind of a catch-22. How do you promote the cause without appearing like a bit of a social media tart? So that was one criticism. The other criticism was from another guy who was really angry. Like, he thought people were pretentious. That's what actually called me. He called me pretentious. He said I was being called out for being superficial. And he went on a massive rant about how he thought the CEO Sleep Out was a huge farce, and that all these CEOs were pretending to do it hard, when what they really should be doing is scooping up people off the street and giving them a shelter for the night and breaking the cycle. So the language is really abusive, and I'm all for sharing different opinions because it causes us to think differently and to think about issues in a different way. I am so against insulting each other. And these two people were really insulting. Like, they took their arguments and they made it personal. They made it attacking, as opposed to let's talk about the issues and share each other's perspectives. So that was my experience around the CEO Sleep Out, and I'm still processing it. Largely, though, in my community, I want people to share their differences of opinions because it helps us to learn and grow, and it helps us to build more compassion. We just need to do it with respect. So that's what I encourage you to do when you're sharing your opinions and criticism, is do it with respect. Don't call people names. Don't insult them. Share your perspective. Invite them to have a look at that. All right, rant over. Next week, guess what? I'm going up to the Northern Territory. I'll be in Darwin. I'm doing a 1-week bushwalking trip with Trek Tours, the company that I use to run my outdoor programs. And I'm doing this from a leisure point of view. I'm doing it for personal recreation. I'm going to be a participant. And I'm so looking forward to that. So because I believe that all leaders need to rest and recuperate and to really rejuvenate. And that's one of the ways I think is the best way to do it, to being out in nature, to really soaking up spectacular environments so you can get new perspective. So that's what I'm up to next week. This week, I'm off to Sydney on Thursday to do a masterclass with Craig Rispin. He is joining my Leaders Edge Mastermind group, and we are talking about the future of communities. So he's always full of huge insights, and our group will be digesting what he has to present about the future of communities and seeing what we can do now to help adjust and adapt and prepare for the future. So that's all happening. Woohoo, exciting. In the meantime, let's talk about self-sabotage. Yeah. So I've had lots of crazy stuff happening and then huge amounts of self-sabotage. And I'll share a personal story as a case study. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this because my clients talk to me about this stuff all the time, how they fall off the wagon of whatever it is their particular endeavor is that they're chasing, either a physical health one or a business one or a personal project. All good intentions just get upturned in certain circumstances. Why is it so? Because the thing is, when in our quest to be boundless, where everything is possible, we can take any action, create any future, one of the things that holds us back the most is this self-sabotage piece. It's a huge barrier. So where does it come from and how can we get back on track is what we're delving into today. So let me tell you what happened. Over the last few days, I haven't had much sleep. Well, CEO sleep out was one of them. I didn't get much sleep, even though I slept well. It was going to bed way past my bedtime and being cold and being overexcited by all the things I was learning, the people I was meeting. So that was a disturbance. But you know what the real disturbance was? And this is where I know the slippery slide of self-sabotage was really rearing its head. So apart from not going to bed at my normal bedtime, I had alcohol to drink, so I don't drink that much. And I know that if I have more than one glass, it gives me a massive hangover. Yeah. So I don't have a huge amount of tolerance, but I know as soon as I start drinking that this is kind of an entry point into self-sabotage. And then this weekend, for the first time in almost 2 years, I had a piece of bread. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes listening, going, really? This is your self-sabotage story? It's not like you had a massive binge, but to be truthful, this is like a binge for me because I have the celiac gene, so I know that eating gluten causes my body a lot of harm. Like it rips through my guts and is not a good thing. And that's why I can't eat gluten anymore, because if I do continue to eat it, I actually will develop celiac disease. So for me to break down and have not just one piece of beautiful sourdough with lots of slathered butter on it, but piece after piece after piece. And it's like, ever been done that? Where you know what you're doing is completely crappy for you and you just persist. And the narrative in the back of your head is, oh, who gives a shit? I'll just keep doing it. It'll be fine. I don't care anyway. I'm going to do what I want. Like, whatever. You have this little gremlin voice that is egging you on. And part of you is going, no, stop, don't do it. This is not good. So, yeah, those things were happening to me. And I sat with it and I thought, wow, what has led me to the point where I knowingly am damaging myself? And it's different for other people. It could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol. It could be going back to a toxic relationship. It could be overwork. It could be working on weekends and staying up late. Like whatever it is for you, we've all got that pattern, right? Okay. Well, this is what I know, is that in order to get back on track, we need to know what our red line is, what our red flags are, and what our keystone habits are. Let me explain a little. Red line. So, you know, in your car where you get the petrol warning signal. So in our car, we actually have like 100 Ks when that light comes on. That's like the orange light. The orange light is you have 100 Ks left of petrol in your car, and then after that, it's going into the red zone. So you get these warning signals. Well, the warning signals at red line is like, okay, you've used up your buffer. Really, this is getting dire. And that's like when the emergency line comes on. And this is like, whoa, dire straits, the car's going to conk out. You'll be left stranded on the side of the road. Well, we should have those kinds of red lines in other aspects of our worlds, whether it be our physical related to our physical goals and self-management, or whether it be our business ones. So a couple of examples. For me, red line when things are really getting out of hand, where I'm veering completely off track in the self-sabotage land, is, for me, lately, I've gone 5 days without exercise. This is massive red line. So as somebody who has exercised a lot and consistently well over the last 10, 15 years, to go 5 days is massive red line, unless I have a huge flu or something like that. And I'm not sick. I do not have the flu. To go 5 days is like whoop, 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 alarm bells. And really my red line is 3 days. I know I can go 3 days and I'm starting to feel edgy. 5 days is like, wow, what are we doing here? So having your own red line where it's like, okay, pull us back from the edge is really critical. So it's important to identify what those red lines are. And largely, if we have a problem with self-sabotage, we need to tighten those up. So likely I need to tighten up 3 days, because it used to be 1 day. If I went more than 1 day without exercise, that was my red line, because I was like, oh, I don't feel comfortable. And since I had adrenal fatigue and I had to reduce my exercise, it's been a bit softer. So I think that's one to tighten up. And certainly now that I've hit 5 days, it's like, okay, that's it. I've got to exercise. So in a business context, for me, the red line about if I haven't done something, then it's red alarm bells, is making phone calls. So a critical component of my business is reaching out to clients and checking in with them, and to checking in with potential new clients and talking about their challenges and to see if there's anything I can do to assist them with that. If I haven't made phone calls all week, then I know that this is a red line activity, because the knock-on effect. And I think that's what red line stats are, is identifying a point where the knock-on effect is going to be critical. So, do you know what your red line is, whether it's in your physical health world or your business world? It's important to identify. Like, that's the point of no return. We need to take drastic measures. Red flags are what happens before, hopefully well before we get to the red line moment. And this is the ones where, if you stop doing X, it is the slippery slide to the red line zone and worse. So what are your red flags? For me, I know that if my meditation drops off, that's a red flag. It means that I've dropped my focus on myself. It means that I've dropped my care, my self-care. Another red flag is, when was the last time I spent any time outside, more than like going from the car to the house? That's a red flag for me. That shows that my priorities have gone out of whack. My self-care has dropped down the scale. So red flags are pretty important. So some other red flags might be in business. It might be, okay, when are you closing down for the night? Are you doing emails at 11 p.m.? That's a red flag. That means that your priorities have jumped out of whack. So for all leaders, I insist that the self-care piece comes at the top of the tree. Most leaders, when I start working with them, have an order something like family, work, self, or work, family, self. But self is often at the bottom of the tree. And what happens is that they burn out, they fry themselves, their health suffers, and everything else gets harder. So we need to put self-care at the top of the tree. So we need to have these little red flags saying, okay, if I stop doing this, then my other good habits crumble. And for me, meditation is the one that if I stop doing that, everything else crumbles, because it's the first thing I do in the morning. So if I say, can't be bothered, that can't be bothered flows into everything else. Can't be bothered to exercise, can't be bothered to stretch, can't be bothered to eat properly. And it just creates a slippery dip. So what are your red flags when it comes to self-care and when it comes to business? The third thing we need to be mindful of is keystone habits. And this is what we need to identify. What are the things that we know are little things that set us on the right track for the rest of the day, that keep us focused on positive activity? For me, I mentioned one of them, meditation. So 20 minutes every morning is what I get that starts me off right. Then it's having a good, decent, solid breakfast. For me, that's a smoothie or eggs and zucchini. Yeah, I know, right? Zucchini. But it's something I've been doing for a couple of years now. Those two breakfasts that's my go-to really strong, positive breakfast. So I know that I'm right. Little messages, taking control, doing something good for myself. Third keystone habit is drinking enough water. I know if I have the can't be bothered feeling, I don't drink enough water. And enough water for me is at least 3 liters a day. So it used to be 4 when I was exercising 6 days a week, right? So all that's gotten softer. So I know that I need to crank that up a little bit. And the fourth keystone habit is movement. That's exercise, whether it's stretching or foam rolling or doing calisthenics or going for a run or going to the gym. Movement is something that reminds me I'm important, my body's important, my self-care is the number one thing. So red lines, red flags, and keep to see how I went. However, I'm telling yous all. So there you go, accountability. Okay, I'd love to hear what your self-sabotage looks like and what other tips and tricks you may have to get yourself back on track. So feel free to comment on the podcast blog, the blog of the podcast. It's zoerouth.com/podcast/